They call her Mercy Caine, but the bounty hunters tracking her know the truth. She's the daughter of Jacob Blackjack Caine, the most wanted outlaw in 3 territories. She never pulled a trigger, never robbed a stage, but blood runs thicker than innocence. When 6 hunters corner her in a dying mining town, she learns that some legacies demand more than running. Some demand choosing between her father's dark past and her own uncertain future. These lands know pain better than joy. Every mark in the sand tells a story, but folks rarely listen. I saw this tale with my own eyes, like the crackle of a fire at night. The shadows of the past don't leave. You'd best listen close. Out here, it's the only way to survive. The town of Redemption Flats was dying the way all desert towns die, slowly, bitterly, with the sun burning away whatever hope remained like moisture from cracked earth. The main street was a corridor of broken dreams, false front buildings leaning into each other like drunks sharing lies about better days. Dust devils danced through abandoned storefronts where merchants once hawked dreams wrapped in canvas and iron. The silver mine that birthed the town had gone dry 3 years back, and now only the stubborn or the desperate remained. People too poor to leave or too broken to try. Mercy Caine rode into town on a mare as dust-covered and exhausted as herself. 23 years old, but carrying the weariness of someone who'd spent half her life running. Her dark hair was pulled back beneath a worn hat, her clothing deliberately masculine. Canvas trousers, a faded shirt, boots that had walked 1,000 miles of hard country. Only her eyes betrayed her, wide and intelligent, the color of storm clouds before lightning, holding depths that spoke of education and refinement at odds with her rough appearance. She'd learned young that being a woman in the West made you vulnerable. Being the daughter of an outlaw made you a target. The combination was nearly fatal. The saloon, the Silver Dollar, though the sign hung crooked and the dollar sign had faded to a ghost, stood at the center of town like a rotting tooth. Mercy tied her horse outside, her hands moving with practiced efficiency, always aware of her surroundings. The street was mostly empty, a few townspeople moving through their routines with the mechanical precision of people who'd forgotten why they bothered. An old man swept the boardwalk in front of the general store, the broom pushing the same dust from one place to another in an endless, pointless cycle. A woman hung laundry that would be dusty again before it dried. Children didn't play here. There were no children left in Redemption Flats. Inside, the saloon was dim and cool, a relief from the brutal afternoon sun. The bar was scarred oak, the mirror behind it cracked in 3 places like lightning had struck it. 6 men occupied the space, for playing cards at a corner table, one standing at the bar nursing whiskey, and one sitting alone near the door, his chair positioned to watch both the entrance and the room's interior. Professional paranoia. Mercy recognized it because she practiced it herself. The bartender was a thick-shouldered man in his 50s, his face a geography of broken capillaries and old disappointments. He looked up as Mercy approached, his eyes making the calculation every bartender makes, trouble or money. She slid a coin across the bar. Whiskey. Water if you have it clean. The bartender poured without comment, but his eyes lingered on her face a moment too long. Recognition flickered there, quickly suppressed. Mercy's stomach tightened. She'd seen that look before. The moment someone placed her features, saw past the dust and masculine clothing to the resemblance she couldn't hide. Her father's eyes, her father's sharp cheekbones, the Caine legacy written in bone and blood. She drank the whiskey fast, letting it burn away the exhaustion, then sipped the water slowly. The card game continued behind her, low voices and the snap of cards on wood. The man near the door hadn't moved, but she felt his attention like pressure against her back. The other solitary drinker at the bar ordered another round, his movements too casual, too studied. "You passing through?" the bartender asked, his tone carefully neutral. "Or looking for work? There's not much here for anyone anymore." "Passing through," Mercy replied. Her voice was low, roughened deliberately to match her appearance. "Need supplies. Then I'll be gone before sunset." Supplies might be hard to come by. The bartender wiped a glass that didn't need wiping. General store's low on everything. Owner's been waiting 3 weeks for a freight wagon that probably isn't coming. You might try Morrison's. He runs a trading post on the north edge of town. Keeps better stock. The man at the door stood suddenly, his chair scraping against the floor. The sound cut through the quiet like a knife. Mercy didn't turn, but every muscle in her body tensed. In the cracked mirror behind the bar, she watched him approach, his reflection fragmented across 3 separate planes of broken glass. A man divided, coming together with each step. Mercy Caine, the man said quietly. His voice carried the flat certainty of someone who'd spent years learning to read faces, to track prey, to collect bounties. Been looking for you across 3 territories. Your daddy's got a lot of people interested in his whereabouts, and you're the best lead we've had in 6 months. Mercy turned slowly, her hand resting near the knife, sheathed at her belt. She didn't carry a gun, had never learned to shoot, despite her father's attempts to teach her. The knife was different. Silent, personal, less likely to attract attention when you needed to defend yourself. The man was tall and lean, dressed in the practical clothing of someone who spent more time in saddles than beds. His face was weathered, his eyes cold and calculating. A bounty hunter. She'd encountered enough to recognize the breed. Behind him, the card players had stopped their game. The other drinker at the bar had turned to watch. 6 men total, all of them suddenly very interested in her. I don't know where my father is, Mercy said, her voice steady despite the fear coiling in her gut. Haven't seen him in 5 years. Whatever bounty you're chasing, I can't help you collect it. The bounty hunter smiled without warmth. Maybe, but there's another way to look at it. You're Blackjack Caine's only child. The man loves you, everyone knows that. We take you, send word through the right channels, and he comes running. Man like that, he'd trade himself for his daughter. That's worth more than any tracking and waiting. The trap closed around her like iron jaws. This wasn't about information. It was about bait. They'd use her to draw her father out, and then they'd kill them both. Collect a bounty on Jacob Caine, and eliminate the only witness who might complicate the story. You've got this wrong, Mercy said, backing slowly toward the bar, creating distance, buying time to think. My father doesn't know where I am, doesn't care. He made his choices 15 years ago when he chose the outlaw trail over being a father. Taking me won't bring him. Another man stood from the card table, shorter, stockier, with the broken nose of someone who'd been in too many bar fights. We'll take that chance, he said. Name's Uni Garrison. Your daddy killed my brother in a robbery gone wrong. I'm owed blood for blood. If taking you brings him, then you're coming with us. The bartender had stepped back, distancing himself from what was about to happen. The other patrons, if there had been any, had melted away, sensing violence. Mercy stood alone against 6 men, her knife useless against those odds, her father's legacy finally catching up to her in a dying town at the edge of nowhere. What'll it be, girl? The lead bounty hunter asked. Easy way or hard way? We're taking you regardless, but how much you hurt in the process is up to you. Before Mercy could answer, the saloon doors burst open. A man stepped through, silhouetted against the brutal afternoon sun, his features obscured by shadow and dust. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a duster that had seen hard miles. 2 revolvers rode his hips, and he carried himself with the casual confidence of someone who'd walked into 100 dangerous situations and walked out of all of them. 6 armed men surrounding one unarmed woman, the stranger said, his voice carrying the rough gravel of the frontier. His accent was cultured beneath the roughness, educated, which made him more dangerous, not less. Seems like poor odds. Maybe I'll even them out of touch. The bounty hunters turned, assessing this new variable. The lead hunter's hand drifted toward his pistol. This doesn't concern you, stranger. Walk away. The stranger stepped further into the saloon, and the light finally revealed his face. He was perhaps 40, his features sharp and weathered, with eyes that held the particular coldness of someone who'd killed and would kill again without losing sleep. A scar ran along his jaw, knife work, old and poorly healed. but it was his expression that stopped the bounty hunters cold. He wasn't afraid, wasn't even particularly interested. He looked at them the way a butcher looks at cattle, assessing, calculating, already planning the cuts. "I'm making it my concern," the stranger said quietly. "The lady walks out of here unmolested. You boys go back to whatever rock you crawl from under. Everyone lives to see tomorrow. That's my offer." Uni Garrison laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You against 6 of us? Those are suicide odds, friend." The stranger's hand moved to his revolvers, not drawing, just resting there. "Casual. Ready. Maybe. But at least 3 of you die before I do. Which 3 wants to volunteer?" The saloon held its breath. Dust motes hung suspended in the light streaming through the door, and somewhere outside, a shutter banged against a building in the afternoon wind. The moment stretched, taut as a bowstring, one wrong word away from explosion. The standoff lasted 10 heartbeats, long enough for Mercy to see the calculations running behind the bounty hunter's eyes. They were weighing odds, measuring resolve, trying to determine if the stranger was bluffing or genuinely ready to die, taking some of them with him. In that frozen moment, Mercy studied her unexpected ally, searching for answers to questions she hadn't even formed yet. Who was he? Why intervene? The lead bounty hunter, the tall, lean one with cold eyes, broke first. His hand moved away from his pistol, but his expression promised this wasn't over. "Your funeral, stranger. But the girl's ours. We'll wait. She's got to leave town eventually, and when she does, we'll be ready." "Then you'll wait a long time," the stranger replied, "because she's leaving with me. Right now. Through that door. And if any of you feel particularly motivated to follow, we'll settle things outside where there's room to work." He gestured toward Mercy without taking his eyes off the bounty hunters. "Come on, girl. Time to go." Mercy hesitated. Trading one dangerous situation for another unknown one wasn't necessarily an improvement, but the bounty hunters were a certainty. They'd use her as bait and likely kill her once they had her father. This stranger was at least a variable, an unknown quantity that might offer escape. She moved toward the door, her body angled to keep both the stranger and the bounty hunters in her peripheral vision. Trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. The stranger backed out behind her, his hand still hovering near his revolvers, his attention never wavering from the 6 men inside. Outside, the afternoon sun hit like a physical blow. Mercy squinted against the glare, her eyes adjusting as she moved toward her horse. The stranger was already mounted on a buckskin stallion that looked like it could run for days without tiring. The kind of horse you needed when your life depended on distance and speed. "Ride north," the stranger commanded. "Fast as you can. Don't look back. Don't stop until you reach the canyon breaks about 5 miles out. I'll catch up." "Why are you helping me?" Mercy demanded, even as her hands moved to untie her mare. "What do you want?" Explanations later. Survival now. He turned his stallion toward the saloon, drawing one of his revolvers with fluid ease. The bounty hunters were already pushing through the doors, spreading out, reaching for their weapons. The stranger fired 3 shots in rapid succession, not the men, but at the dirt near their feet, forcing them to dive for cover. "Go," he shouted. Mercy went. She spurred her mare hard, sending the exhausted animal into a gallop it couldn't sustain for long. Behind her, more gunshots cracked through the afternoon air, the bounty hunters returning fire, the stranger providing cover. She didn't look back. Looking back got you killed. The canyon breaks appeared on the horizon like a promise of shelter, red rock formations rising from the desert floor, carved by millennia of wind and flash floods into a labyrinth of passages and dead ends. Mercy guided her mare into the nearest canyon, then dismounted, leading the animal deeper into the maze. Her lungs burned from the thin air and exertion, her heart hammering against her ribs. She found a narrow crevice where 2 rock walls met at an angle, creating a sheltered space invisible from most approaches. There she waited, knife drawn, trying to control her breathing, listening for sounds of pursuit. Minutes passed like hours. The sun tracked across the sky, shadows lengthening across the canyon floor. Hoofbeats, single horse, moving at a steady pace. Not the frantic gallop of pursuit, but the measured rhythm of someone who knew exactly where they were going. Mercy pressed deeper into her hiding spot, the knife held ready. If this was one of the bounty hunters, the stranger rode into view, his buckskin picking its way carefully through the rocky terrain. He'd holstered his revolvers, but kept his hands visible, non-threatening. When he was perhaps 20 feet from her position, he stopped and dismounted. "You can come out," he called. They didn't follow. I put enough bullets near them to convince them that chasing us immediately was bad for their health. They'll regroup, but we've got maybe 6 hours before they pick up the trail. Mercy stepped out slowly, knife still drawn. "Who are you?" "Name's Cole Masters," the stranger replied. "Used to ride with your father. Long time ago, before things went sideways. Before he became Blackjack Caine, and I became whatever I am now." He studied her with those cold eyes that somehow carried a flicker of something warmer. Recognition, maybe, or memory. "You look like him. Same eyes. Same way of standing like you're ready to bolt or fight any second." "If you rode with my father, then you're an outlaw," Mercy said, her voice sharp with accusation and fear. "Which means I traded 6 bounty hunters for 1 criminal. Not much of an improvement." Cole smiled without humor. "Was an outlaw. Past tense. Did 5 years in territorial prison for robbing a Wells Fargo stage. Got out 2 years ago. Decided I was too old and too tired to keep running. Now I work as a cattle buyer, moving between ranches, living quiet. But old habits die hard. And when I saw those men cornering you..." He shrugged. "Your daddy saved my life once. Took a bullet meant for me during a job that went wrong. Figured I owed the family a debt." Mercy wanted to disbelieve him, but something in his voice carried the ring of truth. "My father's choices aren't my responsibility. I didn't ask to be born into his legacy." "No child asks for their parents' sins," Cole agreed. "But we carry them anyway, whether we want to or not." He moved to his horse, pulled a canteen from his saddle, and took a long drink before offering it to Mercy. "Question is, what are you going to do now? Those bounty hunters won't give up. Uni Garrison lost his brother to your father. That's personal. And the others smell money. They'll track you across the territory if they have to." "Then I keep running," Mercy said, taking the canteen and drinking deeply. "It's what I've been doing for 5 years. What I'll keep doing until my father's dead or caught, and his legacy finally releases me. Running only works until you're too exhausted to run anymore," Cole replied. "Or until you run out of places to run to." His expression shifted, became more intent. "There's another option. A harder one, but one that might actually free you." "What option?" "Turn your father and yourself." Cole let the words hang in the air between them, like gun smoke. "You said you haven't seen him in 5 years, but I'm guessing that's not entirely true. I'm guessing you know ways to contact him, places he might be. You bring him in, testify that you're not part of his crimes, and you collect the bounty yourself. That money could buy you a new life, somewhere he's not famous, somewhere his legacy doesn't follow you." Mercy felt like she'd been punched in the chest. Betray my own father? Is it betrayal if he's guilty? If he chose this life knowing it would destroy yours? Cole's voice was relentless, pushing at foundations Mercy had spent years building. "Your father's a killer, Mercy. Multiple murders during robberies. Guards dead. Innocent people caught in crossfire. He's not a romantic outlaw. He's a dangerous man who's left bodies across 3 territories. At some point, loyalty becomes complicity." She wanted to argue, to defend the man who'd raised her, who taught her to read and ride, who told her stories under desert stars before everything went to hell. But memory was a poor shield against truth. Her father was guilty. He'd chosen the outlaw trail when her mother died, had dragged young Mercy into a life of running and hiding until she was old enough to escape on her own. And even then, his reputation had followed her, making every town temporary, every friendship conditional. "I don't know where he is," Mercy said finally. The words scraped raw from her throat. That part's true. Last I heard, he was operating out of the Montana territory. But he moves constantly, uses different names, even if I wanted to find him. But you have ways, Cole pressed. Letters, contacts, places you could leave messages that would reach him. A man like Blackjack Caine doesn't completely cut ties with his only daughter, not if he loves you. The truth was, Cole was right. There was a system, a network of intermediaries and mail drops that allowed Mercy to send word to her father if necessary. She'd used it once, 3 years ago, when she'd been sick and desperate. Her father had sent money through the same channels, along with a letter telling her he loved her and to stay hidden, stay safe. Even if I contacted him, Mercy said slowly, what makes you think he'd come? He survived this long by being smart, by not taking unnecessary risks. Because those bounty hunters will keep hunting you, Cole replied, and word will spread, if it hasn't already, that Blackjack Caine's daughter has been located. Every bounty hunter and opportunist in the territory will descend on you like vultures on carrion. Your father will hear about it, and when he does, he'll come, because despite everything, he's still your father. Mercy turned away, staring out at the canyon walls glowing amber in the late afternoon light. Her whole life had been shaped by choices her father made, his grief over her mother's death turning to rage, his rage turning to crime, his crimes turning him into a legend that overshadowed everything Mercy tried to build for herself. Every job she'd lost when someone recognized her name, every friendship that ended when her past surfaced, every town she'd fled in the night because staying meant danger. And now Cole was offering her a way out, a betrayal that might be liberation. If I did this, Mercy said quietly, if I contacted him and set a trap, what happens to you? You said you owed him a debt. Helping me betray him seems like a strange way to repay it. Cole was silent for a long moment. The debt I owed was to keep his daughter safe. If turning him in is what keeps you safe, then maybe that's how I pay it. Or maybe. His voice trailed off, something painful flickering across his face. Maybe I'm tired of watching good people suffer because men like your father and me made bad choices. Maybe this is my chance at something resembling redemption. The sun was touching the horizon now, painting the desert in shades of crimson and gold. Night would come fast, and with it, the cold that turned the desert from furnace to freezer. They needed to make camp, needed a plan, needed to decide. There's a cabin, Mercy said finally. 2 days' ride northeast from here. Abandoned line shack from an old cattle operation. If I sent word to my father, told him I was in trouble, needed help, that's where he'd come. He knows the place. We hid there once, years ago, when marshals were close. Cole nodded slowly. Then that's where we set the trap. We fortify the cabin, prepare for his arrival, and we take him alive. You testify, collect the bounty, and you're free. His expression hardened. But understand this, once we start down this path, there's no turning back. Your father will see it as the ultimate betrayal. Even if he survives prison, he'll never forgive you. I know, Mercy whispered, and maybe that's exactly what I need, for him to finally understand that his choices destroyed both our lives. They made camp in the canyon that night, building a small fire hidden deep in a crevice where its light wouldn't be visible from above. Cole proved efficient at campcraft, setting up bedrolls, rationing food and water, organizing their limited supplies with the practiced ease of someone who'd spent years on the trail. They ate in silence, both lost in thoughts too heavy for words. As full dark settled and stars emerged in impossible numbers across the black sky, Mercy finally asked the question that had been gnawing at her. In prison, did you hear about my father? About what he's been doing? Cole poked at the fire with a stick, sending sparks spiraling upward. Some other inmates talked. Guards mentioned news when it suited them. Your father's legend's grown. People tell stories about Blackjack Caine like he's some kind of folk hero, robbing from the rich, evading the law, living free. He paused. They don't mention the dead. Never do in those stories. How many? Mercy asked. Though she wasn't sure she wanted the answer, Cole met her eyes across the fire. At least 14 confirmed. Maybe more that haven't been proven. Mostly guards and lawmen, but there were civilians too. Wrong place, wrong time. Your father's fast with a gun and doesn't hesitate. That's how he survived. 14 lives. 14 families destroyed. And somewhere in those numbers was the brother Uni Garrison mourned. The man whose death had turned a bounty hunter into a revenge seeker. Mercy closed her eyes, feeling the weight of her father's legacy pressing down like the mountain above them. "Tomorrow we ride for the cabin," Cole said quietly, "and we send word to your father. After that, it's just a matter of waiting and preparing for what comes next." Mercy nodded, unable to speak. She'd made her choice. Now she had to live with it, or die trying. The lined shack materialized from the desert like a mirage-given substance, with a gray wood, sagging roof, windows that had lost their glass to vandals or wind years ago. It sat in a shallow depression, surrounded by scrub brush and scattered boulders, invisible from most approaches, until you were nearly on top of it. That concealment had made it perfect for hiding from law. Now it would serve the opposite purpose. Mercy and Cole spent the first day fortifying the cabin. They repaired the worst of the structural damage, shored up walls that threatened collapse, cleared sight lines in all directions. Cole worked with the efficiency of someone who'd prepared ambush positions before, identifying cover, calculating angles, mapping escape routes if everything went wrong. "This'll hold," he said, testing a beam they'd braced with deadfall would scavenged from the surrounding area. "When your father arrives, we'll see him coming from at least a half-mile out. That gives us time to prepare, to position ourselves." He looked at Mercy, his expression serious. "You need to be clear in your mind about this. When he arrives, you'll need to convince him to surrender. Talk him down, because if it comes to gunfire, people die." "And if he doesn't surrender?" Mercy asked. "If he sees this for what it is, a trap, and fights?" "Then I put him down," Cole replied flatly. "I've killed before. I'll do it again if necessary to keep you alive. That's the deal." That evening, Mercy sat alone in the cabin with pen and paper, staring at the blank page by lamplight. This letter would either save her or destroy everything. The words needed to be precise, desperate enough to bring her father running, but not so dramatic he suspected a trap. She wrote and rewrote, crossing out lines, starting over, until finally she had something that might work. "Father, I'm in trouble, the kind that can't be talked or bought out of. 6 bounty hunters cornered me in Redemption Flats 3 days ago. I managed to escape with help, but they're still hunting. Uni Garrison is among them. He blames you for his brother's death and wants blood. I'm hiding at the old line shack where we stayed after the Copper Springs job. Do you remember? You taught me to track there, showed me how to read the land. I need that safety again, and I need your help. I know I said I wanted nothing to do with your life. I know I told you to stop writing, but I'm scared, and you're the only person who can protect me from men like Garrison. Please come. Please help me. Your daughter, Mercy." She read it 3 times, each reading tasting more like betrayal. The memories referenced were real. Her father had taught her tracking, had shown her how to survive in harsh country. The fear was real too, though its source wasn't what the letter implied. She was afraid of what she was about to do, afraid of the moment her father realized his own daughter had become his Judas. Cole took the letter without comment, folding it carefully and tucking it into his coat. "I'll ride to Copper Springs tomorrow. There's a telegraph office there and a mail station. This'll reach your father's network within a week. Figure another week for him to receive it and make the journey here. 2 weeks total before he arrives. 2 weeks to prepare. 2 weeks to second-guess every choice. 2 weeks to wake up each morning wondering if today was the day she'd completely lose her nerve." Cole left at dawn, his buckskin stallion fresh and ready for the hard ride. Mercy watched him disappear into the desert heat shimmer, then turned back to the cabin and the waiting. She used the time productively, organizing supplies, improving their defensive positions, trying not to think about her father's face when he realized what she'd done. The days crawled past with the agonizing slowness of water torture. Mercy hunted small game, rationed water from the nearby spring, kept watch through the long nights when every sound seemed amplified. Coyotes crying in the darkness, the wind moving through the cabin's gaps like breath, the scuttle of scorpions across sun-heated rock. On the 8th day, Cole returned, looking haggard and trail-worn. "It's done," he said, dismounting stiffly. "The letter's in the system. I also picked up supplies in Copper Springs, ammunition, food, rope for binding, everything we'll need. Any word about the bounty hunters?" Mercy asked. Cole's expression darkened. "They're still looking. Garrison's hired more men, up to 10 now, from what I heard. They're working outward from Redemption Flats in a search pattern. They'll find this place eventually, but hopefully not before your father arrives. And if they come first, then we deal with them," Cole replied. "Together. You any good with that knife of yours?" "Good enough," Mercy said. She'd cut men before, not killed, but wounded enough to escape. The memory sat bitter in her mouth. The waiting resumed, each day identical to the last. They established routines, one person on watch while the other slept, meals eaten quickly and without ceremony, conversations limited to necessary planning. But in the quiet moments, when exhaustion dropped defenses, Cole began to talk about the past. "Your father was different when I knew him," he said one evening, as they sat watching the sunset paint the desert in impossible colors. "This was before your mother died. He was wild, sure, but there was joy in him. He'd laugh at danger, make jokes while bullets were flying. The kind of man who lived so intensely you couldn't help but be drawn in." "What changed?" Mercy asked, though she knew the answer. "Your mother," Cole said simply. "She was his anchor, the thing that kept the wildness from turning dark. When she died in that fever, something broke in him. The joy left. The laughter stopped. All that remained was the wildness, and wildness without joy is just violence." Mercy had been 12 when her mother died, old enough to remember the transformation. Her father had withdrawn into himself, spending long hours staring at nothing, refusing comfort. Then one day he'd emerged from his grief, like a man emerging from a cave, changed, hardened, ready to burn down the world that had taken his wife. "First robbery was supposed to be one job," Cole continued. "Enough money to pay off debts, give you a better life. But one job led to another and another. The territory was offering rewards. Your father became famous. And fame is a trap of its own. Once you're known as an outlaw, every lawman wants to be the one who brings you down. You can't stop because stopping means getting caught." "Why didn't you stop?" Mercy challenged. "You said you left that life." Cole smiled sadly. "I got caught. 5 years in territorial prison sobers a man, gives him time to think about choices. Your father's never been caught, never had to face consequences long enough to realize they're real. So he keeps running, keeps robbing, keeps killing, and the legend grows." On the 13th day, as Mercy stood watch at dawn, she saw dust on the horizon. A single rider, approaching at a steady pace, not hurrying but not cautious either. The posture in the saddle was familiar, confident, relaxed, a man comfortable in his own skill. Her father. "Cole," Mercy called softly. "He's here." Cole emerged from the cabin, his revolvers already checked and holstered, his expression grim. "You ready for this?" "No," Mercy admitted, "but I don't think I'll ever be ready." They took positions, Cole in the cabin's interior shadows, Mercy standing visible in the doorway. The plan was simple. Her father approach, let him see his daughter apparently safe. Then Cole would step out with guns drawn. The element of surprise was their only advantage. Her father was faster, more experienced, deadlier. But if they caught him off guard, talking to Mercy, focused on reunion rather than danger, Jacob Blackjack Caine rode into the clearing like a king surveying his domain. He was 52 but looked younger, his body still lean and powerful, his movements economical and precise. Dark hair silvered at the temples, face weathered but handsome, eyes the same storm cloud gray as Mercy's own. He wore his guns low and loose, ready for the fast draw that had made him legend. when he saw Mercy. His face transformed, the hard edges softening, something like joy breaking through. "Mercy," he breathed, swinging down from his horse with athletic grace. "Thank God. I got your letter and rode straight here. Those bounty hunters, are they close? We need to move quickly." Mercy opened her mouth, but the words wouldn't come. She'd rehearsed this moment 100 times, planned exactly what to say, how to keep him talking while Cole positioned himself. But standing here, seeing her father's genuine relief and concern, the betrayal felt too enormous to voice. "Mercy," her father stopped 10 feet away, his expression shifting from joy to concern. "What's wrong? Are you hurt?" His hand moved toward his gun, not drawing, just checking its presence. That unconscious gesture of a man who lived with constant danger. That's when Cole stepped into the doorway behind Mercy, his revolvers drawn and aimed at Jacob Caine's chest. "Hello, Jacob. Been a long time." Time seemed to stop, the world holding its breath. Jacob Caine's eyes moved from Mercy to Cole, to the drawn revolvers, then back to his daughter. Understanding dawned across his face like sunrise, terrible, illuminating, stripping away every illusion. "Cole Masters," Jacob said quietly. His voice carried no surprise, only a vast weariness. "I heard you got out of prison. Should have known you'd choose the law's side eventually." His gaze fixed on Mercy. "And my daughter, my own blood, set the trap." "Father, Mercy started, but her voice broke. She'd imagined this moment would bring clarity, would feel like liberation. Instead it felt like dying. "Don't," Jacob interrupted, and his voice carried a gentleness that was somehow worse than rage. "Don't explain. Don't justify. I understand perfectly." He slowly raised his hands, keeping them visible and away from his weapons. "You want me to surrender? Trade my freedom for your safety? That's the deal, isn't it?" "The bounty's $12,000, Cole said, his guns never wavering. "Enough for Mercy to start over somewhere your legend doesn't reach. Enough to buy a life that isn't running and hiding. You owe her that much." "I owe her everything," Jacob replied. His eyes never left Mercy's face. "When her mother died, I should have given up the outlaw trail. Should have found honest work, raised her proper. But grief makes men stupid, and pride makes them stubborn. I thought I could give her a better life through robbery than through farming or clerking. Thought money stolen fast was better than money earned slow." He laughed bitterly. "Turns out I gave her nothing but a legacy of fear." "You killed 14 people," Mercy said, the words forcing themselves out past the constriction in her throat. "Maybe more. Uni Garrison's brother. Guards doing their jobs. How many families did you destroy the way you destroyed ours?" "Every one of them," Jacob admitted. "And I carry them all. Every face. Every name I learned later. They sit on my chest at night, those dead men, and sometimes I can't breathe under their weight." He lowered his hand slightly, a gesture of surrender that seemed to encompass more than just this moment. "You think I don't know what I've become, what I've cost?" "Then end it," Cole commanded. "Unbuckle your gun belt. Slow. Let it drop. We'll take you to the territorial marshal. You'll stand trial. Maybe they hang you. Maybe you get prison. But it ends, Jacob. The running stops. The killing stops. And your daughter gets to live without your shadow over her." Jacob's hands moved to his belt buckle, fingers working the leather. For a moment, Mercy thought it would be this simple. Her father would surrender. They'd transport him to justice, and she'd walk away with the bounty and her freedom. But life in the West was never simple, and men like Jacob Caine didn't survive through surrender. The sound of hoofbeats interrupted the frozen tableau, multiple horses, approaching fast from the south. Cole's attention flickered for just an instant toward the sound, and that instant was enough. Jacob's hands blurred, drawing both revolvers in a motion too fast to follow, dropping and rolling behind his horse in the same movement. "Get down," Cole shouted, pushing Mercy back into the cabin as the first shots rang out. Not from Jacob, from the approaching riders. The bounty hunters had found them. The clearing exploded into chaos. 10 riders burst from the scrub, guns blazing, led by Uni Garrison on a massive roan. They'd surrounded the cabin's position, cutting off escape. Their fire concentrated on the structure. Windows shattered, with splintered. Bullets punched through the thin walls like they were paper. Cole returned fire from the doorway, his shots precise and deadly. 2 riders went down, one clutching his chest, the other tumbling from his saddle with a scream. But there were too many, their fire too intense. Cole was forced back deeper into the cabin. Mercy pressed against the back wall, her knife useless against this kind of assault. Outside, Jacob Caine fought his own battle. He'd taken cover behind his horse, a cruel necessity that used the animal as a shield, and was trading shots with the bounty hunters who'd recognized him immediately. They wanted him as much as they wanted Mercy, maybe more. The legend himself finally cornered. Caine, Garrison's voice cut through the gunfire. You killed my brother. Murdered him for a strongbox of railroad money. Today you pay that debt. Your brother drew on me first, Jacob shouted back, reloading with fluid efficiency. He made his choice, same as I made mine. Same as you're making right now. Garrison's response was more gunfire. The assault intensified, bullets creating a storm of lead and splinters. The cabin couldn't withstand this. The walls were already showing daylight through bullet holes, the roof sagging where supports had been shot through. If this continued, the entire structure would collapse, burying Cole and Mercy in the rubble. Then something unexpected happened. Jacob abandoned his horse, sprinting across the open ground toward the cabin, firing as he ran. Bullets kicked up dust around his feet, tore through his duster, but none found flesh. He dove for the cabin door, rolling to his feet beside Cole, both men now side by side despite everything. What are you doing? Cole demanded, never stopping his return fire. Saving my daughter, Jacob replied. Same thing you're doing. We can settle our accounts later, assuming there is a later. Right now, we've got 10 angry men trying to kill all of us. Cole's laugh was sharp and humorless. Fair enough. Welcome to the last stand. The 3 of them, outlaw, ex-outlaw, and the woman caught between them, fought together against the assault. Cole and Jacob worked with the unconscious coordination of men who'd once ridden together, their fire overlapping, covering each other's reloads, turning the cabin into a fortress despite its deterioration. Mercy passed ammunition, reloaded weapons, even fired once when a bounty hunter got too close to a window. But they were outnumbered and surrounded. For every bounty hunter they wounded or killed, the others adjusted, found better cover, coordinated their assault. The ammunition was running low. Cole checked his remaining bullets and swore. Garrison had planned this well. Overwhelming force against a fixed position. The cabin wall to their left suddenly gave way, weakened timbers collapsing inward under sustained fire. Sunlight and dust poured through the gap, along with gunfire that forced them to abandon half their defensive position. They retreated to the back corner, their options narrowing to nothing. There's a root cellar, Mercy suddenly remembered, her voice urgent. Southwest corner, hidden under that planking. It's how I survived when marshals raided this place years ago. If we can get down there, seal the entrance. They'll just wait us out, Jacob said, but he was already moving toward the planking, yanking it up to reveal a dark hole beneath. Trap ourselves underground. Better than dying above it, Cole countered. And maybe after dark, we can slip out, make for the canyon breaks. He fired 3 more shots through the gap, buying them seconds. Jacob dropped into the cellar first, then reached up for Mercy. She hesitated, looking at this man who was her father and a stranger, a legend and a killer. Their eyes met, and in it she saw genuine love mixed with genuine regret, the complex truth of who he'd been and who he'd become. I'm sorry, he said simply, for all of it, for every choice that led here. Then Mercy was dropping into his arms, into the darkness, and Cole was following, pulling the planking closed above them just as the bounty hunters stormed the cabin. They huddled in the earth-smelling darkness, listening to boots thunder overhead, to the sounds of the cabin being ransacked, to Garrison's voice shouting orders. Find them. I want bodies or I want prisoners. Search every inch. The darkness of the root cellar pressed close, Cool earth and older secrets surrounding them. Above, the bounty hunters tore apart the cabin, their frustration evident in every crash and curse. In the confined space below, 3 people who should have been enemies sat shoulder to shoulder, united by survival's temporary truce. The root cellar was a tomb of earth and stone, barely 6 feet deep and 8 feet across. The air tasted of moisture and decay, of potatoes long rotted and forgotten seasons. Jacob had struck a match, its brief flare revealing their prison. Earthen walls held back by timbers that looked older than memory, a ceiling so low they had to hunch or sit. When the match died, darkness returned absolute and suffocating. Above them, the bounty hunters methodically destroyed what remained of the cabin. Boots thundered across the floor planks that concealed the cellar entrance. So close Mercy could hear individual footsteps, could track Garrison's voice as he moved from room to ruined room shouting orders. They can't have gone far. The horses are still here. Check the perimeter. Someone watched the canyon approaches. They're hiding close, probably waiting for dark. Mercy sat with her back against the cool earth wall, pressed between her father on one side and Cole on the other. The 2 men hadn't spoken since dropping into the cellar, but she could feel the tension between them like a physical presence, decades of shared history and divergent choices occupying the narrow space. "How long can we stay down here?" she whispered, her voice barely audible even in the close quarters. "Until they leave or we suffocate," Jacob replied quietly. "There's not much air circulation. Few hours at most before it gets dangerous." "They'll post sentries," Cole added. "Garrison's not stupid. He'll leave men watching the cabin, the horses, the obvious escape routes. Even if we wait until full dark, getting out undetected will be nearly impossible." "Then we don't get out undetected," Jacob said. His voice carried a hardness Mercy recognized from childhood, the tone he used when making decisions that couldn't be unmade. "We go out fighting. Take as many with us as we can. At least Mercy might slip away in the chaos." "No," Mercy said sharply. The word came out louder than intended, and all 3 of them froze, listening for any indication the bounty hunters had heard. Above, the destruction continued unabated. Mercy lowered her voice. "No more killing. There has to be another way." "There isn't," Jacob replied gently. "Men like Garrison don't negotiate, don't surrender. They came here for blood and bounty, and they won't leave without one or both. The only question is whose blood gets spilled." Cole shifted in the darkness, and Mercy heard the metallic click of him, checking his revolvers by feel. "The girl's right, Jacob. More killing just makes this worse. Every man we put down up there is family, has someone who'll want revenge. The cycle never ends." "That's rich coming from you," Jacob shot back, his voice carrying an edge. "How many men did you kill during your outlaw days, Cole? How many families mourned because you and I decided robbing stages was easier than honest work?" "Too many," Cole admitted, "which is exactly why I know that killing our way out of here solves nothing. We survive today. Garrison's friends come tomorrow, or next week, or next year. Violence only births more violence." The darkness seemed to press closer as the words hung between them. Above, the sounds of destruction were fading, replaced by voices in discussion. Garrison organizing his men, deploying them in a perimeter, settling in for a siege. "When I rode here," Jacob said quietly, "I thought I was saving my daughter. Thought those bounty hunters had cornered her and she needed her father's guns to survive. Turns out the real trap was the one she set for me." There was no anger in his voice, only a deep sadness that somehow cut deeper. "Can't say I blame her. I made her life a nightmare. Gave her a legacy she never asked for and can't escape." "I didn't want this," Mercy whispered. Tears were burning her eyes, though whether from emotion or the stale air, she couldn't tell. "I just wanted to be free. Free of your shadow, free of running, free of being hunted because of who my father is." "I know," Jacob replied, "and you deserve that freedom. Both of you do." His voice shifted, became more purposeful. "Which is why I'm going to give it to you. Cole, when I go up through that entrance, you count to 30. Then you take Mercy and run. Head northwest toward the canyon breaks. The bounty hunters will be focused on me, tracking me. That's your window. Father, no. Mercy started. Yes. Jacob interrupted firmly. This is my choice, Mercy. Maybe the first good choice I've made since your mother died. I'm tired. Tired of running. Tired of killing. Tired of the weight of all those dead men on my chest. But most of all, I'm tired of watching you suffer for my sins. Jacob, don't be a fool, Cole said. You go up there alone. They'll cut you down before you clear the entrance. It's suicide. Then it's suicide, Jacob replied calmly. I've been dying by inches for 15 years anyway. At least this way it means something. At least my daughter gets to live. Mercy felt her father's hand find hers in the darkness. His grip strong and warm and heartbreakingly familiar. It was the hand that had taught her to ride, to track, to survive in country that killed the unprepared. The hand that had also pulled triggers, taken lives, built a legend soaked in blood. I love you, Jacob said simply. I always have. Even when I was making every wrong choice, destroying both our lives, I loved you. I need you to know that. I know, Mercy choked out. I love you too, which is why you can't do this. We'll find another way. Together. All three of us. But even as she said it, she knew there was no other way. The bounty hunters had them surrounded, outnumbered, outgunned. The cellar was running out of air. And sooner or later, someone would find the hidden entrance. Jacob's sacrifice was the only play that offered even a chance of survival for her and Cole. Cole, Jacob said, his voice carrying a formality that felt like ritual. You owed me a debt for saving your life all those years ago. I'm calling it due. Not for me, for her. You get my daughter out of this territory. Help her start over somewhere she can be someone other than Blackjack Caine's daughter. Give her the life I couldn't. I will, Cole promised. You have my word. Then we're square, Jacob said. All debts paid. All accounts settled. He released Mercy's hand and moved toward where the entrance had to be, guided by memory and instinct in the absolute darkness. Mercy heard him positioning himself, checking his weapons one final time, preparing for what came next. 30 seconds, Cole, Jacob said. No more, no less. And Mercy, don't watch. Don't look back. Just run. And don't stop running until you're someone else, somewhere else. Promise me. I promise. Mercy whispered, the lie tasting like ash. How could she not watch? How could she not bear witness to her father's final act? Jacob took a breath, then another. Then he slammed his shoulder into the planking above, bursting upward into the ruined cabin in an explosion of wood and dust and desperate courage. Mercy heard him hit the floor above, heard his revolver's fire in rapid succession, heard the bounty hunter's shouts of surprise and fury, heard the return fire that came like thunder. Cole was counting under his breath. 5, 6, 7. His hand found Mercy's arm, began pulling her toward the entrance. Above them, the gunfight was a storm of sound and fury. Jacob's guns against 10 others, a hopeless battle fought for seconds that might let them escape. 15, 16, 17. Mercy climbed toward the entrance on legs that felt boneless with terror and grief. Through the gap, she could see smoke and muzzle flashes, could see her father's silhouette diving behind the ruins of a table, firing, moving, refusing to die easy. 28, 29, 30. Cole pulled her up and out, kept her low, guided her toward the back wall where the collapse had created an exit. Behind them, Jacob Caine fought his last fight, and the sound of it, the desperate, defiant roar of a man choosing his ending, would echo in Mercy's memory forever. They burst through the gap into the evening twilight, the sun a bleeding wound on the western horizon. Cole had his revolver out, but the bounty hunters were all focused on the cabin's interior, on the legendary outlaw who'd finally been cornered. 2 sentries had been posted on the perimeter, but both had moved toward the sounds of combat, leaving the northwest approach momentarily unguarded. Cole and Mercy ran. They ran through scrub and over rock, ran toward the canyon breaks that promised concealment, ran while behind them the gunfire reached a crescendo and then suddenly stopped. In that silence, Mercy knew her father had fallen, knew that Jacob Blackjack Caine had fired his last shot, had paid with blood for his daughter's chance at freedom. They didn't stop running until the darkness was complete and the cabin was miles behind them. Only then, deep in a canyon where the stars emerged one by one like witnesses, did Mercy finally collapse to her knees and weep. For her father, for herself, for everything that had been lost and could never be reclaimed. Cole stood watch, giving her grief its space, his own face carved from stone in the starlight. 3 months later, Mercy stood on the platform of a train station in Denver, Colorado, watching passengers board the eastbound express. She wore a respectable traveling dress, dark blue with modest trim, purchased with money from a job she'd found working in a dry goods store. Her hair was properly pinned beneath a small hat. Nothing about her appearance suggested violence or tragedy. She looked like what she was becoming, a young woman making her way in the world through honest work and careful living. Cole Masters stood beside her, also transformed. Clean-shaven, wearing a proper suit instead of trail-worn dusters, he looked like the cattle buyer he claimed to be. The guns were gone, sold or hidden. Mercy didn't know and hadn't asked. Some questions were better left unasked. "The tickets for Chicago," Cole said, handing her the paper. "From there you can go anywhere. Change your name, build a new life. I know people in Illinois, honest people who can help you get settled. Find work that doesn't involve explaining your past." Mercy took the ticket, feeling its weight. It was heavier than paper should be. Or maybe that was just everything it represented. Escape, reinvention, the chance to be someone other than Mercy Caine. "What will you do?" she asked. Cole smiled faintly. "Same as you. Start over. Maybe head to California. Try my hand at something legitimate. I'm too old for outlaw life, and too tired for revenge. Time to see if a man can change what he is, or if we're all just stuck being what we were born to." They'd spent 3 months carefully covering their tracks, moving through towns where no one knew them, avoiding anywhere bounty hunters might search. They'd heard the stories, the legendary Blackjack Caine's last stand, how he'd fought 10 men alone, killed 3 before they brought him down, how Uni Garrison had claimed the bounty but lost 2 brothers to the fight, leaving him rich but alone. The stories never mentioned a daughter who escaped, and that omission was more valuable than gold. "He saved us," Mercy said quietly. "My father. After everything, after the trap I set, he still saved us." "That's what parents do," Cole replied. "Even the worst of them. Even the ones who made every wrong choice. In the end, they try to give their children something better than they had." He looked at her with those cold eyes that had slowly warmed over their weeks together. "Your father was a killer, Mercy. A criminal. But he was also a man who loved his daughter enough to die for her. Both things can be true." Mercy nodded, unable to speak past the constriction in her throat. She'd spent weeks wrestling with that truth, that her father had been both monster and martyr, that his love had been genuine even when his choices were terrible, that she could mourn him while acknowledging the harm he'd caused. "The bounty hunters," she said, "Garrison and the others, will they come after us?" "Doubt it," Cole replied. "They got their blood and their money. And officially, as far as anyone knows, Blackjack Caine's daughter died years ago. You're just a young woman named Mary Caldwell from Kansas, heading east to work for her aunt's dressmaking business." He'd created the identity carefully, with papers and backstory and details that would survive casual scrutiny. "Keep your head down, don't draw attention, and you'll be fine." The train whistle blew, a mournful sound that cut through the bustle of the platform. Passengers were boarding, porters were loading luggage, and the engine was building steam. Time was running out. The time for goodbyes, for endings, for final words between people who'd been through hell together. "Thank you," Mercy said, meeting Cole's eyes. "For everything. For saving me in Redemption Flats. For helping me even when I was planning to betray my own father. For staying with me after he died. For this." She held up the ticket. "You didn't owe me any of it." "Maybe I did," Cole replied. "Maybe helping you was how I finally paid off all the debts I owed. To your father, to the men I killed, to the person I used to be. Or maybe, he paused, something vulnerable flickering across his weathered face. Maybe you gave me something to fight for besides my own survival. That's worth more than any bounty. Mercy impulsively hugged him, feeling him stiffen in surprise before his arms came up to return the embrace. It was awkward and brief. Two people unaccustomed to gentleness trying to express what words couldn't capture. When they separated, both looked slightly embarrassed. "Last call," the conductor shouted. "Denver to Chicago. Last call for boarding." Mercy picked up her small case. Everything she owned in the world fit in one bag now, and started toward the train. Halfway there, she stopped and looked back. Cole hadn't moved, was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Cole," she called, "do you think we can really change? Become something other than what we were?" He considered the question seriously, then smiled, a real smile, perhaps the first she'd seen from him. "I think we have to try. Otherwise, what's the point of surviving?" She nodded, turned, and boarded the train. She found a seat by the window and watched as the platform began to slide away, as Cole Masters became a smaller figure in the distance, as Denver became a memory and then a dream. She watched until there was nothing to see but prairie stretching to the horizon, empty and endless and full of possibility. The woman who'd been Mercy Caine settled back at her seat and closed her eyes. When she opened them again, she'd be Mary Caldwell, and her life would begin anew. The past would remain. She'd carry it always, the weight of her father's choices and her own, the memory of a man who'd loved her enough to die for her freedom. But it wouldn't define her. Not anymore. Outside, the landscape changed from desert to grassland to farmland, each mile taking her further from the West that had shaped her, from the legends and violence that had been her inheritance. She thought of her father in those final moments, charging up from darkness into light, choosing his ending on his own terms. She thought of her mother, dead from fever, whose loss had broken a man and set in motion everything that followed. And she thought of herself, not the girl who'd run for years, not the daughter of an outlaw, not the woman who'd set a trap for her own father, but someone new, someone yet to be defined, someone who'd survived hell and emerged with the scars, but also the strength. As the sun set and the train carried her east into her future, Mercy Mary whispered a prayer for the dead and a promise to the living. She would be worthy of her father's sacrifice. She would build a life that honored both the love he'd given and the freedom he'd died to provide. She would be more than her legacy. The train rolled on through the gathering darkness, carrying her towards cities she'd never seen, toward a life she'd have to build one careful choice at a time. Behind her, the Wild West receded into memory and myth. Ahead, everything was uncertain and terrifying and absolutely hers. The inheritance she carried now wasn't blood or legacy or legend. It was choice, and for the first time in her life, every choice would be entirely her own. The conductor passed through, lighting the lamps as full darkness descended. In their gentle glow, Mary Caldwell opened her small case and pulled out a book. Not a memory, not a relic, but something new. She began to read, and with each page turned, the distance between who she'd been and who she might become grew just a little wider. Somewhere in the territories behind her, bounty hunters told stories of Blackjack Caine's last stand. Somewhere, Uni Garrison drank away his grief and money. Somewhere, Cole Masters built a new life from the ruins of his old one. And somewhere in the endless possibility of the American frontier, a young woman named Mary Caldwell closed her book, smiled at her reflection in the dark window, and finally, allowed herself to hope. The train carried her east, toward dawn, toward tomorrow, toward freedom hard-won and more precious for it. See you around, my friend. I've got another story for you.